What is up, guys? It's SoSport back again with another video, and in today's video I have compiled a list of one player from each NBA team that I believe that is underrated. Now for me, underrated means someone who isn't looked at as much on the team as maybe someone else, and just you're underrated. You're not rated highly when you should be. That's my personal opinion of what the meaning underrated means. So let's get into it. These teams are in alphabetical order by their city names or state names. So starting off with the Atlanta Hawks, I think their underrated player is Dewayne Dedmon. Now Dewayne Dedmon is a great center for cheap. Dewayne Dedmon is not a center that's going to come out here and ask for 20 mil a year. He'll probably ask for 7 to 10, and he'll give you maybe what 60 to 70% of these centers that are asking for 20 to 25 mil can give you. He can space the floor. He's a good defender. He's a good rebounder. He's just a great player overall, and I think he's one player that every team should look at adding. Next on this list, I have the Boston Celtics, and their underrated player is Al Horford. Al Horford is obviously not a stats guy, but what he does for that team goes beyond stats. He's a leader. You know, the team follows him. He's a great passer for a big man. He can score when need be. He's a good defender. He can stretch the floor. And in the playoffs, his game just elevates, and he's just all around better in the playoffs. So that's who I believe is underrated for that team. For the Brooklyn Nets, I said Spencer Dinwiddie. You know, last year he really came on the scene as a great six-man. He signed a small deal. I think it was 3 year, 24 mil. Last year he was great too. He averaged 14 and 7, and I think he had the best turnover to assist ratio in the league. So do you like to see that? This year, I'm pretty sure his stats just dipped down a slight bit, or maybe they got better. I think he stayed around the same, but he was still great this year too, and I think he's a great player. And yeah, he's underrated. Now for the Charlotte Hornets, I said Jeremy Lamb. This shocked me too. Jeremy Lamb averaged 15 points per game this year on pretty good efficiency, and what was great for the Hornets this year, he had I think he had a couple of buzzer beaters for the Hornets this year. I feel like he's been in the league for a while. I remember on his OKC days to now what he is. You know, he's a great scorer when he's on your team. You know, he's a good defender. So yeah. Next on this list, I have the Chicago Bulls, and I said Zach LaVine. When talked about the best shooting guards in the league, you have the top guys obviously that you think about. You got guys like James Harden, Klay Thompson, and then you have maybe the tier below of Bradley Beal and CJ McCollum. But what nobody talks about is Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine averaged 25, 5, and 5 last year. Those are all-star numbers. Those are great numbers. Obviously, you know, it wasn't looked at as much because his team was trash. But look at the Wizards. Bradley Beal averaged around the same. I think Bradley Beal is obviously better. You know, he's definitely better. But I don't think Zach LaVine is that far off. I mean, 25, 5, and 5. That's great numbers, and he was efficient too. He shot 47% from the field. That's great numbers. You know, he's very athletic. He's a great scorer. I think he's good in the clutch. Now, my only problem with him is obviously his injuries. He has torn his ACL, but this year he did look fine. And if he continue this, he'll be a great player for the Bulls, for many years to come. And now for the Cleveland Cavaliers, I said Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is not talked about as much as a bench player. He had the second most bench points in the league this year. It just wasn't talked about at all. And he's a great scorer. That's kind of all I can really say about him. He's a great scorer. He played 81 games this year, so you like to see that he's durable. And I mean, yeah, to see what he's come back from when in the 2018 playoffs, he stunk it up. I think he had the worst playoff performance out of anybody in NBA history. There's like a stat for that, but he was horrid. And to see him come back and be this great bench piece for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's nice to see. Next on my list for the Mavs, I didn't really find anybody, but Jalen Brunson is someone who came to mind. I tried to avoid using like rookies or young players in this list because, I mean, this is their first year. How can you call them overrated or underrated in their first year? But I couldn't find anybody else on the Mavericks. Mavericks fans, I'm sorry if there's someone that is like super underrated that just went through the top of my head. But Jalen Brunson is the only one that I could think of. I'm pretty sure he played at Villanova. I think for 4 years he won I think he won 2 championships there. Great point guard, averaged around 10 points per game last season. He's just great. He's not great, but he's good all around. I think he'd be a good role player for the Mavs. Maybe sort of like a JJ Barea for them. And yeah. Next on my list, I have the Denver Nuggets, and I said Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap has been underrated for his entire career, from his Utah Jazz days to his Atlanta Hawks days to now. He's a great defender. He's a great two-way player. He can rebound. He can score. Kind of. He was an all-star when he was in Atlanta. Maybe those games have come and gone, but he's now 34. But still, he's probably the Nuggets' best defender, but his problem was he wasn't playing much this year. He was kind of injured here and there, and I don't know what's next for him. I mean, he's 34, so maybe he wants to chase a ring, go to a team on a short deal, or maybe he wants to get that bag, get that money, and go to a team on a longer deal. I don't think it'll be with the Denver Nuggets. I think the Nuggets are looking to win now, and signing Paul Millsap to a long-term deal isn't a winning now move. But yeah, Paul Millsap is my underrated player for the Denver Nuggets. Next for the Detroit Pistons. This one was tough too. I settled on Ish Smith. I just thought about Ish Smith, how when Reggie Jackson is injured, Ish Smith always comes in and does great. And I think personally, Ish Smith fits that team more than Reggie Jackson does, because Ish Smith is more of a facilitator. He's more of a playmaker, and he can shoot better, score the rock efficiently. Not score the rock, but like shoot the rock more efficiently. And yeah, that's what I just see him as, a great role-playing point guard, great facilitating point guard, and I think he's underrated. Next on the Warriors, Andre Iguodala is my underrated player. Andre Iguodala, year in and year out, there's always times in the playoffs, in the finals, he makes that big play. I'm not really sure what it was last year, but in 2017, he stripped LeBron in game 3? Game 3, when the Cavs almost took it. Kyle Korver missed the corner 3. LeBron came back, had a good look, stripped by Iguodala. 2015 had the LeBron assignment, and he was Finals MVP that year. But and then just this past year, just this past series with the Blazers, he stripped Damian Lillard. I want to say it was game 3 or game 4, but he's just always clutch for them come playoff times. He might not have the stats in the regular season, but I don't really think they're trying in the regular season anymore. But he turns it on in the playoffs, and he never fails to succeed. He's always, it's like an insurance policy, you know, he's always there. He always makes something happen. Just yesterday, actually, by the time I'm recording this video, he had a big 3 for the Raptors. I mean, not for the Raptors, excuse me, against the Raptors. He was left wide open. If he had missed that, I think the Raptors come down to court and score a 3 or tie it up, and at least we're going overtime. But clutch 3 he hit yesterday. He's just a clutch player in my eyes. Next for the Rockets, I have PJ Tucker. Now, I don't understand how some players like James Harden had more all defensive votes than PJ Tucker. What? That doesn't make any sense to me. PJ Tucker's a great defender. He's a great rebounder too. I think he's only like 6'8". And he's always hitting those corner 3s for the Rockets, and that's his role. On defense, you want him to be everything. You want him to have those big guy assignments, and on the offense, you don't need him much. He just stands in the corner, and he always hits the shots consistently. He's a great player for the Rockets. Too bad. The only problem is he's getting up there in age now. So yeah, that could be a problem for them moving forward. But moving on, for the Pacers, I have Miles Turner. I'm just gonna say this: Miles Turner led the league in blocks per game and didn't even make an all-defensive team. That is horrible for me. That doesn't make any sense. How can you lead the league in blocks per game and not make a team? That doesn't make any sense. He's a great defender, great rebounder. I think his problem this year was that they had Domantas Sabonis and they didn't fit together, so it was weird with the lineups that they were making, trying to make it work. It didn't work. I think Sabonis kind of has to go, because you want to definitely keep Miles Turner. Miles Turner is a way better defender, maybe not a way better rebounder, but it's kind of the same. And scoring wise, I like Miles Turner more, because Miles Turner can actually kind of hit the 3. So yeah. Moving on with the Clippers, I have Danilo Gallinari. Danilo Gallinari averaged 20 plus points per game this year. There were talks about him potentially making All-NBA third team over LeBron. He was great this year. He was great. You know, the problem with it throughout his career was that he was always injured. I think last year he had some injury problems. This year he wasn't injured too much. I think he played a decent chunk of games. But I mean, he's a good player. He was always a good player throughout his career. The problem was just he was always injured. A scorer, he can shoot the rock, and that's what he can give you. Great scoring. For the Lakers, I said Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma averaged around 19 points per game this year. Same thing with Danilo Gallinari minus the injuries. He's a great scorer, can shoot the rock well. That's what he can give you. Great scoring, and he's a good athlete too. So that's what I want to say about Kyle Kuzma. Now for the Grizzlies, Mike Conley has been underrated for his entire career. He has always been criminally underrated. He has never made an all-star team, despite averaging, I think, 20 points and 7 to 8 assists year in and year out multiple times. He's the heart and soul of the Grizzlies team, and it's going to be so sad seeing him get traded away from Grizzlies, because more than likely the Grizzlies came out and said once they draft, well, the Grizzlies didn't say, but there's reports that once the Grizzlies draft Ja Morant, Mike Conley's more than likely going to be traded, which ends an era of the grit and grind. That era was great. 2013, I believe, when they pushed, when they made it to the Western Conference Finals. Still got swept by the Spurs, but still, that team was great. Yeah, man, it's sad. It's sad. Mike Conley has always been underrated in his career, and when he got that Supermax deal, wasn't a Supermax, but when he got that deal with the Grizzlies, people said that deal was overpriced. I didn't think so. For what he's done for that city, for what he's done for that team, he definitely had deserved it. Now, next on my list for the Heat, I said Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson, last year he was great. This year maybe he took a step down due to injuries and stuff, but he's a great player. He's a great two-way player. He can shoot the ball particularly well. He can kind of score, and he's a great defender. I mean, he's only 6'5", 6'6", so he's kind of undersized, but he can guard the twos and the ones. Maybe not so much the front court guys, but definitely the back court guys. Great player all around. For the Bucks, I said Malcolm Brogdon. I don't think he's underrated as opposed to now anymore. He just isn't as talked about, maybe mainly on the Bucks. When you think of the Bucks, the main guys talked about are probably Giannis, definitely Giannis, and Chris Middleton, and maybe he doesn't get as much buzz as them. But maybe I think he should get at least as much buzz as Chris Middleton. I mean, you talk about a guy who averaged 15 points per game, shooting 50, 40, 90 from the field. Yes, 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. Great player, and he's a good defender too. You know, he's really clutch. He was clutch for them in the playoffs, and yeah. For the Timberwolves, I said Derrick Rose pre-injury. Before Derrick Rose had that surgery, he was amazing. He was averaging 16 points. I think he was shooting like 44% from three or something crazy. And then that three came around, and then not that three, excuse me. That injury came around, and it dipped down dramatically. I think before there was a stretch like after the All-Star break to when he had his surgery. I think he shot like 6% from three, something horrible. So yeah, he started off well. He had that 50-point game, and I mean, he's a great player. It's sad to see what he's come to, but he still can be a valuable player to a team. We saw that this past year, and I hope the team does give him a good contract. Moving on, for the Pelicans have a lot of guys that are underrated, but I stuck with Jrue Holiday. I mean, Jrue Holiday, it's good to see that he made it an all-defensive team. Did he make it? I'm pretty sure he did. But talk about a guy who gives you this year 27-5, great numbers. I don't know how that is in an All-Star. I guess you could say because they didn't make the playoffs or they wasn't fighting for the playoffs. Jrue Holiday is a great player. Last year we saw it in the playoffs when he played against the Trailblazers. He was great. He clamped down, locked down defense. I do believe he has locked down elite defense. You saw it last year, and he was giving you buckets too. He's a great player overall. He's a great player that any team would want. And yeah, next on my list, I have the Knicks. I said Damian Dotson. I don't know too much about him, but I know he was I don't know if it was earlier around this year. He had some stretches of games where he was really good, and he's really young too. I think he's a great player. Another player I could probably say is Alonzo Trier. I don't think he's underrated because people know about him, but I think the team with him was he went undrafted, so that's why I would think he'd be underrated. He went undrafted, started the year off well, maybe didn't continue that stretch. Maybe played a little bit lower to the standards, but he was still great. And those two are going to be great pieces for them going on. Next, for the OKC Thunder, I'm going to butcher this name. Is it Jeramian Grant? Jeramian Grant. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. He really came to his own this year. Averaged around 13 and 6 to 7. Great. He can guard like the 1 through 4. He's a great defensive player. He's versatile. He's athletic. He can kind of hit the three. He's great for the OKC Thunder, and I think he's going to be great for more years to come. Next on my list, I have the Magic, and I said Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is a great player. He averaged around 16 and 7 this year. Great efficiency. He was one of the main reasons why the Magic did make the playoffs. When you think of Magic, obviously, you don't think about him as much because he came onto the scene maybe he wasn't doing too much so far, but 16-7 is great numbers. I think the problem is the team constructed around him isn't good. You know, there's not that much spacing to let him do his thing in the middle. And one year when they traded for Serge Ibaka, they had him play small forward which was out of position. I just think the personnel problem is why he hasn't been as successful as maybe you would hope him to be, but he's still a great NBA player, and I think he'll continue to be great for many years to come. With the Sixers, I don't think anybody in the Sixers really underrated. But I just want to say JJ Redick. When you think of the Sixers' success, you think of guys obviously like Jimmy Butler this year, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. One guy who maybe isn't talked about as much is JJ Redick. JJ Redick averaged 17 points per game, and he's so vital, so important to their team. I mean, when you're watching the games, the defense that he attracts opens up the lane for a lot of other guys. He opens up the lane for Ben Simmons to go to the paint. He can open up the lane for Joel Embiid to get his post up, for Jimmy Butler to get maybe an open shot or to get a mismatch. You know, he just opens up the offense so much because of his deadly shooting, and he's valuable to this team. He's very valuable. For the Suns, I said TJ Warren. TJ Warren averaged 19 points per game this year on great efficiency. Coming to his career, his problem was he couldn't shoot at all, and he's kind of gotten it down pat. He can sort of shoot now. I mean, he's a great player. I don't know if he'll get traded or not. I don't think he should be able to get traded. I think the other Suns forward, who I'm going to talk about in my overrated list, should get traded. But overall, a great player. I do like him. And for the Blazers, Seth Curry, he came into his own in the playoffs. He was great for them in the playoffs. He hit some big shots. He's a great shooter. And yeah, I don't know what else much to say. Obviously, he isn't going to get as much shine as his brother. So, yeah. For the Kings, I said Buddy Hield. He was in the most improved player conversation. I think he still should be in the conversation for that most improved player. I mean, talk about a guy who had a rough start to his career. He didn't have a great first season, and in the second season immediately traded to the Kings, which you know, you don't like to see a player traded while young, because it could affect them mentally, but he was great this year. Averaged 20 points per game. He shot 44% from three, which is amazing. He was in the race until maybe Pascal. I think Pascal probably has it now, but he should still be in contention. You know, there's an argument for him. He's a great player, and yeah. For the Spurs, I'm going to say DeJounte Murray. He was injured this year towards ACL, I think last offseason, but he's going to be great. He's a great defender, great facilitator. He's just a great all-around guy, and I think he's going to be great for them for years to come. Raptors, Freddie V came into his own in the playoffs. Didn't really have the best start until his kid was born, and since then he's been lights out. He's been torching teams. He's great, and he's going to be great for them, as I said multiple times, for many years to come. I do believe. I think he's still kind of young. He has an unfair start to his career. He went undrafted, played in the G League, and then came up. And he wasn't as good, maybe as advised this season, but he's a great player. He's a great role player. For the Jazz, I said Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles is a great shooter, great scorer. He came into his own. I think it was 2 playoff series ago at this point when they went against the Thunder and beat them in 6. He was a vital point to their success, and yeah, I think he's going to continue to be a great point to their success. And last but not least, for the Wizards, I said Thomas Bryant or Bobby Portis. I see a lot of mock drafts saying that the Wizards need a big man. I don't think so. Thomas Bryant was great this year for the Sixers, and they also traded for Bobby Portis. And Bobby Portis had a great season for this. Did I say the Sixers? I didn't. I meant the Wizards. He had a great season for the Wizards. I think those two are going to be a good 1-2 punch for the Wizards, and I don't see them having to draft a center. I think they should maybe focus on more getting a forward. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I know this video is really long. It's 19 minutes. I'm gonna have an overrated video coming out tomorrow, and then I'm gonna have like one player destined to breakout video coming out after that. But yeah, it's been So Sports. Tell me your thoughts on my list. Tell me if it's good or bad. Please like and sub and share this with your friends. But it's So Sports, and I'm out. Peace.